I'm from Long Island, just off the coast of Manhattan, in New York. Yeah, I moved to New York when I was 18, but I've been coming to Manhattan in New York City since I was a little boy, and going to see like the Rockettes and the Broadway shows, and shopping, and all the touristy stuff. So that would be like almost every weekend because my dad would come up and my dad would come up with my sister and me and take us out for like a little kind of day trip or something. So I was always spoiled in Manhattan. Drag came about when I grew up in Long Island and I never knew about Fire Island. I had heard what Fire Island was, but I didn't realize how close it was to Long Island and where I grew up. And when I moved back from Los Angeles the first time, that summer found Fire Island through a friend and went out every weekend because I was working at a restaurant and here in the city that allowed me to work 6 days and then have 3 days off. So I would go out for 3-day vacations and just became friends with the bartenders there. And they said, have I ever done drag before? And I said I did like once for Halloween. I was Christina Aguilera from the Moulin Rouge video. And my little box that said drag on it, or Halloween, up in my closet. And they said, next time you come out, you should bring drag, because I was coming out every week. And I was like, okay. So I did, and then they got wind that I used to act, and they asked me while I was getting ready if I wanted to do a number in the show that night. I wasn't prepared or anything, but I kind of whipped something up from a track that I knew from a Broadway musical, and got on stage that night, and the rest is history. It was terrible. My first drag name was Hollywood, and then it was Baby Powder because I was so young looking, and I was white. I mean, like albino white. I didn't realize the double entendre to Baby Powder meant cocaine too, which is totally perfect because I looked like I did tons of it according to my ensemble. And then Baby Powder turned into Madonna Manson, and that wasn't really catching, so I came up with Dallas Dubois, and that really stuck. I've always been like a workaholic and someone who's always been resourceful and a go-getter that way. And I got my first gig because I was going to perform at Urge downtown, and a friend of mine at the time named Regine was doing a show, and I said, can I perform in your show? And she said yes, and someone happened to be in the audience that worked at Evolve Bar, or the old OW, and offered me a show. And it was terrible. My first show was Obama's the election day, the first time, 2008. That was my first show, and there was no one in the bar. And I remember standing in drag and looking at the TV monitors, seeing him be elected, and then having to do a show right after. If that's not, a sign right there that you need to get out of this, I don't know what it is. No, actually, I realized I just became recently sober, like 3 months ago, and I'd been trying for a while, and finally it happened. But I realize now, if I had been sober while doing drag, for as long as I did, I would have left like 4 years ago. But the alcohol and the drugs at the time intensified my feelings of wanting to stay in the business for a while and clouding my judgment. But actually, right then and there, I realized I really liked it. But it was just, I started to see things slowly be taken away from me in my life that I wanted. Like relationships and, sex or privacy. And they slowly were being taken away from me, and I didn't realize until it was almost too late. But I just realized now that I should have listened to my gut for myself and gotten out a lot earlier. I think both. I think that I changed in realizing that this is not, for me, there's a plateau in drag right now, and this isn't it for me. I wanted to keep going. I think that what the appeal to drag was at first for me was the character and the dress up. I always loved dressing up, like in costumes, no matter what it meant, boy, girl, animal, growing up. So like this was just the outlet for me. The appeal wasn't the drugs or the alcohol. It was more the escape for putting on a persona and kind of letting down my inhibitions. And I had been very I've been a performer my whole life, but I was a little introverted because I was always ostracized and teased, and the whole story. So immediately, drag put me back in the spotlight and the feeling of comfortability being on the stage. And then the second part to the question, I definitely gained a gut and like confidence to an extreme when I was in drag. I mean, I'm already a risk taker and I love kind of dangerous things like that, but I would like almost see red or black out during the show sometimes and do things that if I looking back now I could have been killed. I ran on the roof at the Ice Palace in Fire Island, at the second story of the roof in 5-inch stilettos, on a thatched roof that was like this, just because I didn't want to get in the pool instead, which I would always dive in the pool. And instead I thought this would make me more money, and this is something that no one else has ever done. And this is my thinking, is I just want to be a one-upper for myself. And I realized I could have slipped and fallen 2 flights down and landed on the concrete and not been here right now. But it's the adrenaline that pumps you. And where I was performing at Folsom Street Fair here in New York, and I decided to climb the High Line, which is 4 flights up in front of 1,000 people on the microphone during my show, and then came back down and I was bleeding. Didn't realize because my adrenaline was pumping. Well, I mean, I wasn't the craziest of them all, but they loved that I had the juxtaposition of being the put together kind of classier, not classier one, but put together showgirl one, and not maybe a club kid, and then I would pull out some things that that they never would see coming. So I mean, character-wise, I've dressed up as John Benet Ramsey, Helen Keller, Margaret Thatcher the week she died, Hitler. Well, it was for a specific performance, not just because I felt like doing that. I mean, the list goes on. So I like to call myself more of a fishier queen. I just had some outlets that allowed me or provided me to, through the end of my career, to try and spook people or gag people or make it controversial so people would be talking. I went to school growing up, elementary school and middle school. I went to several sleepaway performing arts camps and acting classes after school. Then I went to do some auditions here in the city because I could. I was only an hour away by train. I got a couple of shows off Broadway here in the city. When I was 16, 17, went to performing arts high school on Long Island. Then I went to school for set design for college. So I've always been surrounded by theater. And then I moved to Los Angeles before I started doing drag, did the whole acting thing for a little while. So I've always been around the arts. I always felt that there was a unspoken rule and an unspoken expectation that if you're going to get in drag or you're going to be a show host or something to that extent, and you have a microphone, you have a platform that I think it's an obligation to help use that platform to help in some way, shape, or form, whether it be a cause or education or something. So I would always speak out about HIV awareness and education. I came out about my status several years ago to help acknowledge that there are people that are in the limelight in New York and that are too, but no one wants to come out and say it, and I'm not fearful about anything like that, so I just came out about it. But it pains me to the core of my existence when I see celebrities like Jodie Foster, for example, who came out after she accepted an award for 20 years of being in this business, when everyone knew she was a lesbian for so long, but she didn't accept it or acknowledge it until she was being awarded something. She did it for selfish reasons, and whatever her choices are, that's her. But when you're put in that limelight that's even higher than in New York City's club nightlife, you have an expectation to help the people who don't have a voice or can't come out of the closet or can't do that. And I think it's courageous for the people who do, and it's cowardly for the people who don't. Immediately when I came out about my status, for example, people started coming up to me and started outing themselves to me about, like, thank God you told me, or thank God you said something, because I needed someone that I knew that had it. Like everyone wasn't talking about it for the longest time. Now it's like, all that, the Truvada and Prep and Pep stuff, everyone is talking about it more, but people didn't talk about it for a very long time. So I became their confidant. I would say that I helped them a little bit sometimes. I would say you should go here and speak to this person about getting medication or getting treatment or getting therapy or do this, do that, etc. But I think that I lent more of my caring, softer side that I wanted to help people with, was more trying to condition them for this business and trying to sometimes too offensively or overtly mention how they should do it, which caused a little backlash. But for the most part, I was just trying to help tell them, like, this is what you need to do, this is what you should do, this is how you're going to get this to this place, this is how you're going to get this far, this is how you need to help people, this is what you need to do, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on. For a while, I mistook what work relationships and friendships were and what real friendships were. I mean, I know the definition, and I've known for a while what acquaintance and friend is, but for some reason that was so blurred in the community because you see these people every night on a daily basis. You say hello, you engage in conversation, but you don't know anything about them. You barely know their legal name, their legal first name. You certainly don't know probably their legal last name. You don't know where they came from. You don't know what their favorite food is, what their favorite color is, nothing. So I was mistaking that for friends, and a lot of them, in my definition of friends, hurt me because they weren't really there. They weren't really friends, and they would go back behind my back and talk tons of gossip and tons of negativity behind my back, and I just realized very quickly that I have to kind of stand my ground and be by myself and be independent, and then I'll slowly accept people back into my little circle of my friends and friendships in life because I didn't know who the good seeds were and who the bad seeds were. I slowly started to develop that more, but even now, when I left drag completely, I really got to see who my friends were and who my work friendships were. Because there were these people who I've helped them or hired them, and they've made thousands and thousands of dollars a year doing shows that I've helped them get or that I've hired them for, and they engage in conversation, and it was like a friendship, or so I thought. And immediately when I moved, they're nowhere to be found. So that's a work friendship. The ones that I can still call and they can come and visit, or I come visit here and I stay with them. That's a true friendship to me. The only constant place that I worked either on a regular basis or for a long period of time was really Fire Island, the Ice Palace, the Grove Hotel in Cherry Grove, and then I've worked like 3 years at Evolve and 3 years at the Ritz and 3 years at Industry and 3 years at Barracuda, but they all were on a very separate timeline. But usually, that's part of the gig. Usually in New York and other places, you have your home bar, or your show bar that you go to, that you work at. That's your place. You have your dressing room and everything. Here, you have to put it in a bag and hop from bar to bar, venue to venue, sometimes more than one on a nightly basis. I can't give a specific instant that I was like, I need to leave. They slowly started to accumulate more of those moments, but I can't tell you the defining moment. I just realized that I was very unhappy about 3 years ago. I don't know where. About 3 years ago. I think after 3 years of doing it, I started to realize that this is like Groundhog's Day, the movie. It's very much the same thing every day. At least for people who are established. These, the newer queens, the queens who don't have shows yet, they're still go-getting, they're still hopping from club to club, and it's still exciting, it's still interesting, it's still different. But for me, I had a weekly or nightly routine where I knew where I was going to be for the most part. Additional gigs every so often, but the monotony was killing me. So I slowly just realized that I want more in life. And I mean, I auditioned for Drag Race 4 times, and the third time, season 5, season 5, like the Alyssa Edwards season, that whole season, I didn't make it. I got top 20, and they called me and they said that the top, there was 14 in the cast. One of them was an audience favorite, so there was 13 that they took. They said that 7 that wasn't taken, which was me. Like, they called me up on Memorial Day. I thought I got it, and they're like, no, you don't have it, but don't tell anyone you're auditioning for the following season, because most likely you're going to be on it because you made top 7, the remaining 7, top 20. So I was so excited, and blah, 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 and this was what I was relying on. And then they changed the casting season 6, and they didn't tell me. I was tired of giving the same answers 4 years in a row for these auditions, and so I just said what happened to me in the interim between 1 year and another year, because I thought they've known me by now. I mean, 4 years, they don't want to see the same thing, hear the same stuff. So I just did it my own way, and they changed the casting, and it kind of looked like I was half-assing it, or I wasn't listening to the questions, or following directions, and then they never called me, which I was very upset for a while, and then I got over it, and then I realized this is such the blessing in disguise, and it was my out, because if I had gone on season 6, who knows where I'd be right now. I would be traveling, that's for sure, and I know some people can do it, and some people can't, on a nightly basis, or daily basis, traveling from city to city. And God bless Bianca, because she's doing it, and she's, I don't know how she's staying awake, but she's doing it. I know that I would probably crack. I would probably be exhausted and emotional and very, upset at myself. So, I think that the persona absolutely took over, especially in New York. I remember a specific event where I went on a date with a guy. I had to open the Next magazine and look at the whole 2-page map of New York and where the bars and the clubs are, and select which ones do not know me out of drag, so I can go and have privacy and not be outed as a drag queen before I could tell the person that I was a drag queen. And there was 2 on the island of Manhattan. There was 2, and that's when I realized this is getting too much. And then I would sign on to some of the sites to go and hook up, and there would always be some people who knew me, or my voice. My voice it's me. They always laugh. It's me, Bianca, and Gary. We had the distinguishing voices that people were like, that voice. I know that voice. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, and that would always be the factor. So when that started to happen, I realized that my privacy is now gone, or slowly going away, and I have to do something about it. So I kind of did the opposite. Instead of fading away, I kind of spilled all of my skeletons or my sexual interests on the table on stage, so people knew that, like, it was kind of like a Match.com ad, or what's it called? It was where they send the tape in and they talk about yourself, That was like me, but I was doing it on stage, so people knew, well, if you can't see me on a site, and I'm always working, if you ever catch me as a boy, this is what I'm into. It was kind of like telling them everything, so I can just get all that legwork out of the way. I never brought up what I did for work, ever, which is funny, because in Los Angeles, people don't care. They don't care at all. They're like, oh, you do drag? Cool. Or they'll date drag queens, and it's fine. In New York, there's such a stigma. Maybe now with Drag Race being at its height, it's slowly dissipating and dissolving, but it was very, very tough. So I wouldn't even bring up in a conversation what the guy did for work, because then the next question would be like, what do you do for work? So
you have to tell them sooner or later.
Yeah, so I would say I'm a performer, or I'm in nightlife, and then eventually they'd ask questions later, and I'd say I'll tell you when the time comes. And they would start thinking in their head that, okay, I'm either an escort or a porn star or a go-go boy or a drag queen. But you didn't have a dating life because you're always working at night, and I would start my transitional phase of getting into Dallas at like 8:30, and that's when a dinner date would be. Well, yeah, that's the thing is that they a lot of the people that I know, or my friends and my acquaintances and my club friends, they they take it to an extreme and they live their life the same way, just without a wig, as a boy. I try to take this, as very two separate people and really designate and differentiate the difference. But these other people were combining them, and that was and preventing them from finding a relationship. I can think of 3 people in all of the nightlife that I've worked with here that have a boyfriend, that are performers. I had a great time. I had to say, I wouldn't be where I am in LA if it wasn't for drag. I would never have met the connections that got me there. I would never have had some of my friends that that are my best friends now. I would never been able to travel, not the world, but I traveled abroad many times to perform. I would never have even probably been to London, or I would never been to overseas if it hadn't been for Dallas. And there's so many gifts I got from this. It's just, I had this love, not even hate anymore, but I did have a love-hate relationship with it. Well, I knew I wanted to leave about 3 years ago for sure. I was like, this is the decision, I need to get out of it. But it was so difficult to get out because there's so many opportunities that were falling. I mean, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was the universe spitting in my face. I don't know if it was karma. Something said, okay, you want to leave? Here's so much more success. And I would get gig after gig after gig, money after money. I mean, traveling, people, opportunity, exposure. I don't know what happened, but I tried to get out of it and I couldn't. And it was like swimming up a creek without a paddle, going the opposite direction. I messed that quote up, or analogy, but you know what I mean. So I was trying to get out and couldn't get out. Then the money got better because I got bigger. And then I couldn't get out even more. And then I thought, if I'm going to try and get out, how do I get the same amount of money to stay afloat? Because I just moved to this beautiful apartment in Hell's Kitchen. It was a high rise with other people, but it's expensive. How do I get out of drag and still afford everything? I have to I would have to start at entry level because the only thing I have that is a special skill that people would immediately take me for is scenic design, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So I was thinking about every opportunity I could find to get out, and I couldn't figure it out. Couldn't think. I remember crying to my mom several times on the phone going, I just need you to tell me what to do. Because I was tired of myself doing everything and making every decision for myself. Since I was 18, I was always on my own, and I just needed someone, even if it wasn't her, I needed someone to tell me what direction to go in because I was incredibly lost. It was discomforting, it was emotional, it was like scary, and I became more and more unhappy, and I started slowly dying inside. I put it out there. I just said, looking back on it now, I probably was a really not so cheery person behind closed doors to certain people because they're like, how you doing? I'm like, oh, I just hate this. I hate this. I hate this. And I really don't think it had to do with putting on the drag and doing the shows. It was what came with it. So I kept saying, oh, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. And I kept spewing all this hatred and negativity and discomfort in what I did that I think eventually, by speaking it, things fell into place. Because I said it, I started realizing I just got to be a go-getter and saying everything that comes to mind and taking every opportunity that I could find. And I said it out when I was visiting Los Angeles to a friend that I knew from working at Industry. They opened Industry back like 4 years ago. And they said, oh, we're opening up a theater. And all I said was, oh my God, I'd love to run it. That's it. And then I went back to New York, and he's like, really? I was like, yeah. But that's it. It was just in a car ride, the first day I got there when I was on vacation. And then I woke up like 2-3 months later to an email that was a forwarded email from him about a theater they were looking at. And he was like, so I'm gonna start sending you these emails about, he's like, I want you to read them all. And I'm like, what? I had just woken up. I'm like, what? And then I didn't realize that he was serious and didn't even talk about anything. No salary, nothing. It was just that small little quick conversation. And then we obviously talked about it more when I realized this is it. This is my out. No one believed me I was leaving. So I knew in November I was leaving. Yeah, middle of November. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving until the first week of February. I kept it hush hush. I knew when coming back, there was a tattoo I got called Everyone Dies But Not Everyone Lives. And it's a song from Jessie J. And it's called Gold. And it was really hot right then and there at that time. And I just remember listening to it and thinking how poignant those lyrics were, because I was like dying inside and I wasn't living anymore. So I got this in LA to remember when I come back to New York, these amazing feelings that I had in Los Angeles. So if people tried to discourage me or deter me from moving, I had to remember what that was. So I got that, and I didn't tell anyone. I just knew when I came back I had to pound the pavement, and I took every job, even if it was $100 gigs, which I never would do anymore at that point. I would take it. Every costume making gig that people wanted me to make costumes for, I would take. Anything I would do to make money, and I saved about 15 grand from November to the middle of February. I told everyone I was leaving February 6th or 7th, and I was gone February 28th. It was so cool. I still watch that YouTube video sometimes when I'm not feeling lonely, but I want to remember where I came from, and I miss some people from New York. But the opening part was my funeral, and the first number was me on a casket surrounded by flowers with my picture that said 2007 to 2014 on it, and then the bagpipes starting, really over dramatic, and everyone was dressed in black, and one of them spit on me, another one took my shoes and my jewelry and ran away. And that was really funny. Everyone thought it was really morbid. I'm just laughing my ass off because I just think it was hysterical. And they went to this big I Will Cover You reprise from Rent, and it was funny. And then the show went. We did every number, and the last number, I did this. Actually, I have it here. It's called "The Distance You Have Come." It's a Scott Allen song, and it says, "I don't know where I'm going. All I know is where I'm standing now." And those were the first lyrics. And I came out in a gown, and everyone in the cast came out too. We did this big number, and they slowly started to take away all of my garments, and I rigged this gown to split in half, and underneath it I had my boy clothes on. I had jeans and a tank top and sneakers. They ripped the gown off, they put a hat on me, a jacket, and gave me a suitcase, and I walked off. And I thought that's the best way to go out. And I'll always remember it. I'll always remember that feeling. I always listen to the song, and it gets me emotional still. I like the beard. I haven't been able to not shave for 6.5 years. I don't even know how to maintain this beard, but I'm going to keep it because I just want to. And I got tattoos to make sure. I wanted them anyway, but it's another kind of birth control contraception, to be it's my nouveau ring. I've always been, despite what people say, I've always been attracted to very, 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 very masculine men. I don't know why. That just has always been my attraction. And I've always identified with, the masculine side of the gay community, the eagle and leather and that whole thing. And I didn't feel like I fit in anymore doing drag with that side. So, and I always wanted to have bigger muscles and have definition. I could have gotten the definition in drag, but I was just too lazy. I'm probably hungover most of the time. But I wanted to have bigger muscles, so when I got out of it, I hit the gym. I've never been to the gym before, except maybe 3 times in my life. And before I moved to LA, and then I got there, and now I'm bigger, and it's nice to be a little bit more health conscious and body conscious, and not worry about the cosmetic exterior that I'm going to put on later on at night. That's all I worried about. I didn't worry about my appearance as a boy because I was too concentrated on perfecting the other side of it. So I go to bed at 10:30 now. I used to go to bed at 10:30 a.m. I had like a 9 to 5, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. I say, not the 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And that's what I have now. There's no constant in my life anymore, except for my dog. Everything has changed. Everything. I run a theater. I'm a producer and programmer for a theater company out in LA, and we're still in the midst of changing it. It was called ARC, but then it's a long story. But there's a theater that we were interested in called the Arcade, and then we decided to pull out because we didn't like the situation that we were in. So now we're in lease negotiations for a new spot. So the name will probably most likely change. But in the meantime, I've just been working on a play and a musical for the theater company to produce. One was inspired by me being in it originally. I wrote it 6 years ago or 8 years ago. I never finished it, and I always wrote it for me to be in, and now I don't want to be in it. I just want to direct it. And the other one has nothing to do with me. It's just an idea that popped in my head, and I was like, ding, done. I have to say, I've really had an extraordinary. It doesn't sound like it, but I've had an extraordinary time doing this. It just was my time to go. But I learned what humility is. I've learned what being grateful is. I've learned how to accept and acknowledge every dollar you make and really appreciate every dollar, because there are times where I was very, very, like right now, with my situation with my work, because the theater is not up and running. I've taken half of my salary pay, like a pay cut, while we're waiting, and I'm probably the poorest I've ever been, but that's okay. I'm incredibly happy, and I was doing drag for 6 years and at the height of my career, and I made a lot of money, and I was incredibly unhappy. So I realized this helped me become grounded again, and I've met some extraordinary, incredible people, and I've laughed so much, and had so many stories that I can write a book about. I can write several books about that you cannot make up. You cannot make up some of these stories that have happened, and I wouldn't change that for anything. And I didn't have joy anymore, and it's nice that I could come back and I hug them and kiss them, and they do the same for me and to me, and I'm incredibly supportive. I might not have the most money to tip them, but I'm still there to support. Or I don't drink anymore, but I'm still there to support, and I have nothing but love and admiration for them all. My mom, when I told her I started doing drag, she didn't know what it was. She thought it was like she asked me, do you go grocery shopping like that? Oh, she said, do I leave my house like that? And I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, of course I do, but I didn't tell her that at the time. And she's like, do you go grocery shopping like that? And I said, no, Mom, that's totally different. She started to slowly accept it, and then I think I started showing her photos. Then she got on Facebook, started following me. Then my aunts found out, and they were like, woo, let's go. And they came to Fire Island, and they were going to leave the same night because my mom was really uncomfortable with it. Well, I got them a little drunk, and they missed the last ferry, so they had to stay overnight. Coincidentally, sorry, Mom. And they had the time of their life in Fire Island, and they were treated like royalty because they were my family. And since then, they have been to countless shows of mine, followed me on Facebook, watched all my videos on YouTube. My mom gave me like a bra or two that she had that was hers because I had not packed one, and I was going from New York City to Fire Island, and we were in the middle in Long Island visiting, and she's like, here, just take this. I mean, you couldn't get better. And then they came to my last show. My aunts, my mom were at my last show. My grandma's been to my show. My other grandma's watched me on YouTube. My dad, who I've had a very, very interesting relationship with, and I hadn't seen him for 10 years, or talked to him for 10 years, came to my show the first night that we reconnected. Stood by himself, he's a straight man, stood by himself in the street in a packed bar and watched a 2-hour show with me hosting. He was remarried, and I didn't know this, and a friend request came into my Dallas Facebook, and I was like, and said Tina like hyphen Donald. Donald's my dad's name, and then Meyer was my legal name before I changed it because I was spiteful and it was like, "Fuck you, Dad." And I was like, "What?" And there was a picture of him with her, and he had gotten remarried, and she was upset that her new husband didn't have a relationship with his children, so she Googled me, Googled Daniel Logan, and out popped, "I'm gay, I'm positive, and I'm a drag queen," which is great because those are three things, conversations I don't need to have anymore. They have it. So he found out, and they would start watching me on YouTube, and then he came to visit as my sister was moving back from deployment from being stationed in Italy and going to San Diego, and he came, sat down, and had a cocktail or whatever, and shot the shit, and then I said, "Do you want to?" I had to leave that night, and he knew to go get ready for a show. And I was like, "Do you want to come to the show?" And he said, "Yeah," like without hesitation. I was like, "What?" Good. So it's 5 months and a week since I had left. I left March 1st. I flew, and then I got back the 7th of August. So, wait. No, we're good? Okay. So yes, I got back. About 5 months and I got back, and it was good. I mean, it was a surprise to my old co-star / friend Logan, hardcore, and no one knew I was coming, so that was great. And the reception about my, I guess the way I looked now and not seeing me for a while was really great. And then it was great. And then I look at all the people who I had left behind that are still doing this, and some of them I'm like, oh, same routine, or doing the same thing. And then some of them have grown tremendously, and I got emotional at the show that I started and I produced called Distorted Disney, which is still running after 2.5 years, and I left them to still do it because I was like, you can take it, I don't need it. And I watched it for the first time in the audience and got emotional because it was like my little kids were going off to school, like they graduated and they're going to college, and that's not being condescending, but I was a couple years ahead of these other queens, and it was nice to be like, oh my God, they've grown up. I felt like a parent. Right now I need to take this time away, find out who I really am again, learn to love myself, learn to enjoy what life as a boy is like, over the age of 21, because I never have, and really realize what I want in life. So this is, you can't get any further except for Alaska in this country, or Hawaii, to be away from, all of what I knew. So I find it to be a really great place for me right now. I'm happy. I have not worn long sleeves in 5 months. It's been wonderful. I've worn jeans twice. It's been great. So the best part was the last show when I did that rip away gown. I went to go pack my suitcase up, and I'm like, what am I doing? I don't have to pack this up anymore to go back home. So I dumped it all back out on the table and I left. I was in LA. It was 2007. I had heard through the grapevine that my ex had it because he was in porn, and I didn't really believe it. Then I kept hearing more about it. So then I went to go get tested, and I found out that I was, and it was a 2-week period back in the day when you had to wait if you wanted to give a full screening of everything, like all STDs and stuff. So I waited 2 weeks for this result, and then so I was very well prepared by the time I found out. So when they told me, I was like, okay. And they were very uncomfortable. They're like, what? I'm not sure if you understand. I'm like, I got it. Thanks. Can I go? I was like, my meter's running, which is really the truth. And then they're like, yeah. And then I left. I didn't acknowledge I had it for about a year. I kind of turned it really quickly. My dog at the time, I broke up a fight at the dog park. He bit me. It was really deep. I had to go get medical attention, and that's when I came out about it because they asked if I had any immune deficiency problems because whatever they're giving me to help if there was an infection could really jeopardize it. And I finally said I did have it. Started realizing that it wasn't a kiss of death anymore. I don't really even know. Whatever reason I did it, it was really ballsy. I mean, I remember at the time going, I'm not sure if I should do this. I'm not sure if I should do this. But I came out in a magazine about it, and then I did this thing for ABC. It's What Would You Do? I'm not sure. With John Quijones, it's like primetime ABC. I just said to myself, I don't want to live in fear. I don't have skeletons in my closet. And I went in for the drag episode. I didn't get it. They asked me if I had faced any adversity, and I said, about my status. And I kept talking with them, and they asked me if I wanted to do the episode, and I said, sure. I figured, tackle your fear head on, and then you won't be afraid of it anymore. And it was the best, with the exception now of Los Angeles, it was the best decision I ever made. Getting out of drag and moving. That was the second best decision I ever made for myself in my life. It was so freeing, and the support was amazing, and it really helped me. I've never grieved over it because I never felt that I needed to, but it helped me really realize that there are people out there that care and that relate. And I'm not giving myself credit to any of that, but I like to think that I hopefully helped a small, very very minimal margin of that. I hope that whatever I did helped someone or helped tell people. I never looked for any acknowledgement or accolades for it. I just wanted to help. What I got in return was even greater and better than any acknowledgement. It was just it was really great. Plans for the future include me running the theater, being extremely happy, living with my dog, hopefully having a significant other at some point. I really would love in 10 years or less to be able to accept a Tony or an Oscar for directing or producing a piece. It used to be acting. I wanted to accept it for the actor, best actor, best supporting actor award, but I realized I don't need the spotlight anymore. I'd rather be behind it and be responsible for bringing a project to fruition rather than the vanity of it. I want, when I get home to LA, I plan to make one of those vision boards, and I want to stare at it in the face so I can remember this is what I'm here for, which is why I got this. These are all my favorite quotes from my favorite movies and my favorite songs, and because if I don't have it in my forefront, it might slip away. Yeah. Jackie Beat, Varla Jean, Coco Peru. I loved Sherry Vine before I worked with her. Lady Bunny, of course. I think RuPaul's a little overrated. Edie, Lip Synca, great. I love the old school drag. I absolutely love it. The ones who don't put on a Beyonce number and just think that that's okay. I think people who think about the cleverness and the wit of drag and how to take it from. Don't get me wrong. I did Beyonce numbers too, but never never thought I was Beyonce. I never thought I could be Beyonce. I never just did Beyonce numbers. I look like her. I love the cleverness of drag and how funny it can be and how campy it can be. And these girls that I mentioned, they get it, and they're some of the people who are responsible for everyone doing it now. I think that Thorgy, I'm not sure if you know who she is, but Thorgy's hysterical. I think that Busted is a queen in Fire Island, is hysterical and so clever. I've never laughed so hard at a show before. Their humor is what I gravitate towards. Queens in LA, in New York that I see that will become bigger would be like Tina Burner, Holly Day, Bob the Drag Queen, Pussy Couture, Bootsy LaFerris, Pixie Aventura, Brenda Darling. If it wasn't for a queen throwing a brick, which they didn't really throw a brick, but taking the parking meter, which took them 20 minutes to go back and forth with two people, taking the parking meter out of Stonewall to break down that door, Who knows where we would be? I never thought I'd do it because I just said that sounds miserable being on a ferry downstairs where there's no ventilation with hundreds of drag queens. Just sounds awful. So I finally was like, all right, I'll do it. And Bianca Del Rio and I were on it, and she got sick because her corset was too tight, and she had thrown up like twice before she even got on the ferry. Then she threw up again on the ferry, and then threw up again, and then we didn't even get a chance to be announced when we got off the ferry in that hot oven of the the basement or the first floor. We just literally, they opened the doors and they let us go right away, and we just left. So I didn't even get a chance to enjoy that, the announcement of each person's name. We just bolted and beelined right for the bathroom, and then for the doctor's the medical tent or whatever it was. She's dressed as a devil, which is ironic, and I was dressed as an angel. So I was like, this is perfect. I'm helping her. She's vomiting everywhere. I've always been that person since I could remember after high school. Actually, since high school, because I was already ostracized for being different. I was like, might as well be at the forefront, and I always wanted to be a leader, never a follower. And I always tried to start doing whatever I did. I was the first one to do it. And it wasn't because I wanted to be the first at it. It's just I wanted to show people that you can do things. So, coming out about my status, or getting on the roof, or if you're a pretty queen, you can be ugly, you can be funny, or you can try to be funny, or you can try new things. Speaking out about my other side of my life with being the leather scene, like I don't know any queen that did that before, whatever it may be. I wanted to show that I'm an example that you can get out of this if you don't like it anymore. A lot of people feel stuck. You get into a rut. You get to know what's comfortable and what's convenient, or what you know, and where the money's coming in. A lot of people feel so stuck. It's really hard to get a day job when you're working nights until 4 o'clock in the morning. If anything, I hope that people see, even if it's 10 years from now, that you can get out of this, and if you don't like it anymore. You don't have to be hateful or upset or angry or sad. You can. There's life after drag.